Hi, I'm Lisa Marie, and welcome to my channel, Living My Best Life. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for being here. And to all of my subscribers, you are the best. Today I'm sharing my best 20 DIYs in 2020. And let's start the countdown with number 20. For this DIY, we're going to take 3 of those little Dollar Tree kind of signs, and then I printed some sheet music off of the internet, free printable, and I actually soaked it in coffee just to discolor it a little bit. And then I used white acrylic paint, and I'm painting all the way around all 3 boxes, and I am going to also go in and do the inside as well. And now I'm measuring to figure out how big I need to cut each of my little sheet music pieces so that I can Mod Podge them inside of each of those little picture frames. And I'm now finishing the inside painting, and I probably did about 2 coats to make sure it covered. And now I'm going to go in with that Mod Podge, and I'm going to attach my sheet music, and of course make sure that they're facing the right direction. That would be very easy to mess up. And then I'm going to take my red crimson paint, and at first I thought I was going to distress the top edge, but then I went in and I just did a solid coating, 2 coats of that. I really love the accent that gives it. It's really hard to be careful and only get it on that top section. So I did go back off camera and touch up with the white anywhere that I might have bled over the edges. So just want you to know I did not do it perfectly the first time. I found these awesome adhesive letter stickers at Walmart, and I just love the color and the shape. It was so interesting. So I'm using a J, O, and a Y because I'm going to spell out the word joy. And then I'm going to do a little bit of embellishing here and there, just figuring out which direction I'm going to want to put them. And then I cut apart some Christmas floral picks, and I used a little bit of pine and some berries. And I'm also going to use a really pretty sparkly pine cone in the middle of the O, which I really think pops. And just kind of place them randomly just to give it a little bit more interest. I found this gorgeous black and silver kind of swirly ribbon at Walmart, and I'm going to use it to kind of string my 3 boxes and have it be a hanging sign going down. And I just think it's the perfect color and accent, and it makes this look really vintage and cool. And I am absolutely loving this. I can't wait to hear what you guys think about it. Once I cut the ribbon to the exact length that I want, I'm going to secure a little bit more with the hot glue just so that it hangs nice and flat. And I'm going to loop the top over, and then I add a little teeny piece of jute twine behind that black ribbon so that it's easy to hang on the wall. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I always have to add something more. So I have this cute little ribbon from Walmart. It's red and white, and I made a teeny tiny little shoestring bow, and I'm going to hot glue it at the very top on that other ribbon just to kind of finish this off. I'm always looking for something else, it seems like. Sometimes you just need to know when to stop. And this was that moment for me. I just feel like this little bow just really finished it off. Today's video is part of a really special collaboration. The host of the collaboration is Heidi Sonboul DIY, and the co-host is Leah at DIY Beauty on Purpose. Both incredibly talented ladies. I will have their channel links down in my description box. And also there'll be a playlist link in my description box with all of the other amazing YouTube crafters who participated and their top 20. The talent in this playlist is just going to blow your mind. It definitely blows mine, and especially starting with Heidi and Leah. Enjoy! Number 19 is a little coffee bar sign that I wanted to make for our coffee bar area. Now, I didn't remember to film the first part. I kind of got excited and creative and forgot to turn the camera on, so I'll walk you through it. I used the tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree and also some of the large popsicle sticks to make this. I've been using the natural wood tumbling tower blocks for projects, but leaving the painted ones, so I thought maybe I'll use them in this project because I can paint over them. I used my hot glue to put 9 of the tumbling tower blocks together in stacks of 3. I repeated this to make all 4 sides and glued them all together. And then I created a square, and you can see that 2 sides that are opposing each other fit inside of the other 2 in order to make the finished box. On what would be the top side, I took 4 of the large popsicle sticks and just framed around so that there would be nothing showing of the tumbling tower blocks. And of course, I cut off the rounded ends of the popsicle sticks for every single one that I did use. I used 9 of the large popsicle sticks then, and I attached them to the very top. As you can, this is from the underneath view, but I did that all the way across to create the front of my sign, and I used my hot glue gun to do that. Once all of the popsicle sticks were attached and everything looked the way I wanted it, I took my Waverly Antique wax and I went ahead and stained the top and then rubbed off the excess with a paper towel. I then painted the tumbling tower blocks with the folk art chalk paint in the color Cascade, and I just did the outside and the very bottom. I took some of my nautical rope and I just hot glued it around the very top outside edges just to give it a little extra trim. And here's another view so that you can see it from a different angle. And at this point we are caught up to where I did film what I was doing. I was looking for a cute little saying having to do with coffee that was pretty short. And I found all kinds of things, and then all of a sudden I got this idea I could do something really different. And so I got my stencils out and my square ruler, which I now know what it's called. Thank you, Alan, from Alan's music channel. And I am now trying to figure out a way to measure this to find out the center. I was watching a crafter's channel, and I wish I could remember which one it was. I apologize that I don't. She shared this trick. If you're measuring something and it's not an even number, you can tilt your ruler until you get to an even number on the edge and then mark it right in the middle there, and you will find your center. And it really worked. So there you go. I did spend some extra time trying to calculate where I actually wanted to put the letters once I had my center. And part of it was I needed to figure out the height of the letters and where everything would fall in the midst of it. And afterwards, it also occurred to me I could have probably done a diagonal measurement and gotten the center that way. But hey, there's more than one option. Once I found the exact spot where I wanted to put my letters, I taped a straight edge to it as a guide so that I would be able to line them up. And I got my stencil out and I used a little dabber and a very small amount of the white chalk paint by Folklore. And I went ahead and I started spelling the word coffee. Now I need to tell you guys, I am terrible at stenciling. I taped down the letters, I cut them out, and they still bled, which means I had to go in and do touch-ups, and maybe it's because they were small, but I just don't do well at stenciling. I'm going to have to look into some good stickers or vinyl. Once I did get the letters on, I took a little art brush and I connected any of the open spots on the letters because I didn't want them to look as much like stencils, so I filled those in. And when I did that, I overpainted, so then I had to go back with the Waverly wax in antique. I finally got to a place where I decided it was good enough. I mean, it is homemade, so it didn't have to be perfect, and I let it go. And this is the part that I made up, which was the hashtag coffee. Even though I'd looked for so many sayings, I had never seen this, and I thought, oh, how cute. In order to balance the words across the middle, I added a heart with my stencil at the other end, and that just really, for me, completed that part. I cut a few pieces off of that same greenery that I used for the picture frame project so that I could add a little more flair to this and it wouldn't be quite as plain. And I did similar kind of a design with the greenery in the corner, but then I didn't want to do flowers, so I just wrapped the two pieces in each corner together around where the stems met with my jute, and then I attached that with my hot glue gun right to the picture on the opposing corners. And I really thought it came out cute. I'd love to know what you think and how you would have done this, if you would have done anything different, or if you have any other ideas, that would be fun. So let me know in the comments. Now, wouldn't you know that I completely forgot to put Mod Podge over the top to kind of seal the paint, and I'd already put the greenery on, so I got my Mod Podge out and a little foam brush, and I just worked around everything. And you know what? It worked out, but silly me, I completely forgot to do that step. So note to self for the next time, get the Mod Podge on before you add anything extra to the top. It's always good to keep learning and keep an open mind because things happen and you just have to adjust. I'd love for you to join me on my channel by hitting that subscribe button and turning on the notification bell so you'll always know when I have a new video. I do all kinds of DIYs, gardening in the summer. If you enjoy my video, please hit the like button and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. That helps my channel so much and I do appreciate it. Number 18. For this ornament, I'm using some jute twine, one of the little wooden snowmen cutouts from Dollar Tree, a really cool kilt that I had, which is really for a wine bottle, and then I've got some paint, ink by Waverly, a white sample I got at Lowe's, pumpkin by Waverly, crimson, and then I end up using a teeny bit of the antique wax as well by Waverly. I separated the wood from the stand, and I'm using the one side that doesn't have any cutouts, and I'm going to cut down the sides so that the little kilt will fit on it. Those little extra humps were in the way, so I'm just using a blade to do that. So a little background on the kilt. For anyone of Scottish ancestry, the kilt is a symbol of honor for the clan which they belong. It was first worn by those who lived in the Scottish Highlands. The kilt was a manner of dress that afforded the fighting army with possibly its most useful tool. Today, the kilt is the national dress of Scotland and it's worn by many. In fact, my husband has one and he wore one at our wedding. As you can see, I'm painting the snowman white on both sides and I did 2 coats to get a good covering. I'm using the ink chalk paint to paint his hat on both sides, and I'm going to use that same color for his eyes and for his mouth and his buttons. I made one of his eyes winking, but not so sure if it came out like a winking eye. You'll have to let me know. I attached the kilt with a dab of hot glue in the front and the back. I saved the wood sticks from my foam brushes, so I cut off a little piece and I made that his little corncob pipe. And I used a little piece of a skewer for the actual handle of the pipe. And I used the Waverly antique wax on the handle, and then I just used ink on the pipe itself. To create his scarf, I used some jute twine, which I wrapped around his neck, and then I made a little tassel by wrapping it around my fingers. I have a video where I show you specifically how to do it, so I will link that down in the description and up in the cards. That way I won't have to explain it. And that's how I made his little scarf. I used a little piece of jute twine to create a hanger on the back. And I wouldn't be me if I didn't have a few extra things to add. So I made a little red stripe on the front and back of his hat, which I actually think really added a lot. The other thing is I decided to add some smoke to his pipe. So I used a little bit of the cotton off of a Q-tip, and it was perfect because it kind of has a swirl to it and it looks just like smoke. Number 17. I started out with some frames that I bought from Dollar Tree, and these actually came with mirrors in them. And these frames are 8 by 10. Believe it or not, taking off the plastic is one of the more difficult parts. First of all, you got to puncture it with something, and that's what I finally did with the screwdriver. So as you see here, I'm going ahead and taking all of the plastic off so that I can prepare these for what I'm going to make, which is going to be a window, a framed window, kind of a decor that kind of looks a little bit like a faux window, even though it's mirrored. And I needed something, we need more light in the room. We only have one window in our living room, and this would provide that light. It would kind of reflect off the window to bring more natural light into the room and also make the room look a little bit bigger. The first thing I wanted to do after I took off the backing and the packaging was to clean the frames. They're kind of made out of like a plastic, and so I cleaned them with some rubbing alcohol. Now, they're not wood, and I do want them to have a bit of a wood grain. What I'm going to eventually do is get some of my chalk paint. I found some Waverly chalk paint at Walmart, and each container holds 8 ounces. And the first color I put in there was white, and I'm actually going to mix some colors in order to make this work. The next one I'm going to use is the Crystal. It's like a bluish color. I'm trying to make kind of a gray look out of this because I don't have any gray and I haven't been able to find any. I'm also adding the antique wax. And for some reason, when I do mix this together, it ends up kind of giving me a little bit of a grayish look when I put it on the dark gray frames. So it's almost like a little bit of a whitewash coating that I'm doing here. And what it's doing is it's kind of aging them and making them look a little distressed, almost a little farmhouse-like, and creating the look that I want. And also, by doing this, it gives that sense of the wood grain, which is what I was trying to accomplish. Considering that they're made out of plastic, I'm very happy with how that turned out. And I did all of them with the same process. I used 8 in total for this particular project, where there's going to be 2 rows of 4 across. And after completing that, I have set them aside to dry. The next step is going to be to cover them with 2 coats of the fast-drying polyurethane clear satin by Mini Wax. I also got this at Walmart. And this does dry pretty fast, and it doesn't take super long to dry, which was a good thing, but it does leave it with a nice kind of clear, shiny finish, and it's easy to clean up if you get it on anything else. And the other thing that I really liked is it did not smell terrible, and it didn't linger in the house, which is what I was concerned about. I was afraid I'd have to go outside to do this, and it was great that I didn't have to do that. I was able to just go ahead and give them each a coat. They dried like within an hour, and then go back and do another light coat, and then I let them sit a little bit longer than that just to make sure they weren't tacky or anything like that, and then I could move on to putting them together, which would be the next step in the project. And you'll notice as I put 2 mirrors together, then I put the backing in so that I can start reassembling everything while they are still smaller pieces. Now, if you saw my last video with my haul, you saw that I have a really nice new cordless glue gun. And I didn't have that yet. This was done several weeks ago. So I'm still using my little baby Dollar Tree glue gun, which was not great, but it did the trick. And I was gluing everything, and what I realized was that I probably never really had to glue it. I probably could have just used this tape. And I'm using the Gorilla Tape, which is unbelievably strong. I mean, when it sticks to your skin, you could remove fingerprints practically. I could not believe how strong this glue was. So, you know, if I did do this again, I would not glue them. I would simply use the tape. And I think it would just come out fine. And it's kind of nice with the tape because you can bend it a little bit. So if you need to do anything, it's a little easier to use when they can bend a little bit in the process. It still keeps them together, but they're flexible, which I really liked. You'll notice that I did 2 at a time, and then I put each group of 2 together to ultimately make my 2 rows of 4. And that made it easier to work with. And here I am, not only taping them together, but kind of cross taping at the intersections wherever there are 4 at the same place. Number 16. I had found this little card carrier thing at the Goodwill a while back at my Goodwill haul. I'll link that video. And I thought, what am I going to do with this thing? So I finally came up with an idea. I had these super colorful napkins that I got at the Dollar Tree, so I removed the ply, so I was left with just the very top one. And I decided I would Mod Podge it to the inside and very bottom of this card holder. And it's not easy to do, oh my gosh, because you've got to reach inside. But I cut out the pieces, measured them, and then I just got everything full of Mod Podge on the inside, and I reached my hand in there and attached it the best I could. And then after it was wet, it just kind of peeled off the top, so that wasn't too bad. And then I did add some pieces to the very bottom after I took off those little, I guess, foam cushion things. And, from Hallmark, this thing would have been expensive, and I got it for, I think, $5. And there you see I've attached the napkins to the bottom, and now I'm just getting rid of all the little edges so that I can do some painting on the actual tin. I think it's like a tin or a metal that this is made out of. And I use my Arteza paints in the green and the blue, and I blended them together to create this gorgeous turquoise color that I thought was a bright color but also fit fall. Now I wanted to give it a little bit of a weathered look, so I used the Waverly white chalk paint, just dry brushed over the top, and that still wasn't enough for me, so I used some rose gold paint from Folklore to create kind of a patina look, and then I was really happy with it. Definitely looked weathered, but it also looked very expensive, very high-end, and I added some fall flowers. Number 15. Now this project is pretty easy, but it's a little bit of one of those inspirational things that just kind of came to me. I used some fabric that I had laying around, just cut some little strips, and I picked fabrics that either had texture or kind of gave me that boho vibe. Didn't matter how long they were because I'm still going to cut them up even smaller, ranging, let's say, anywhere from 1/4 of an inch wide to 1 inch wide, and approximately just as long as it takes to go around whatever size rope you use. Using nautical rope and hot glue, I started rolling it into itself, almost like you were going to make a flat coaster or plate. And as I was rolling it around itself, I would periodically add one little piece of that fabric, hot glued right on to the rope around it, and then kept rolling the rope around. And you can see the effect it's creating is just throwing little color and pattern and texture into it. And I thought it had such a neat look. It reminded me a little bit of people stringing beads periodically, but instead we're making a bead out of different pieces of fabric in a sense. I thought it looked so cool that I made a small one, and then I decided to make a larger one, almost like a trivet, just to see what it would look like. But I'm imagining you could take this and make it much bigger and make a gorgeous wall hanging out of it. And I didn't do it this time, but I think I might. So then I got another idea. What if I randomly took twine, in this case, and just painted strings and then wrapped those around the nautical rope as I created the coaster or the trivet or the wall hanging, just to add color into it. So I used the same 2 paint colors that I did on those other 2 crafts, and I went ahead and tried it. And it was actually pretty cool too. It's just a whole nother look. See how it is? Just kind of has different colors. I want to encourage you to use your creativity and try things. Sometimes they'll work out nice and other times they won't. But you know what? So you might waste a little bit of material, but it's really fun to try new things, challenge yourself, find out what your creativity wants to do, and give it space to grow. Number 14. For this garland, we are going to need 3 different sizes of beads, a small, medium, and large, and you can pick whichever one of those you want. I have quite a few to choose from. I'm going to use my Arteza paint markers and a little bit of a paint sample that I got for $1 at Lowe's. They have those there, and it's so much cheaper than buying the regular paint. Now I'm choosing which 3 sizes of beads that I want to use. And like I did before, I'm going to put my beads on these skewers and paint them while they're on there, and then stick them into a piece of foam so they can dry. It's just so much easier to work with them, and I don't get quite as messy. Now that the beads are dry, I'm going to string them, the largest on the bottom, the middle one in the middle, and then the smallest on top to create a snowman. I'm going to make sure there's a big enough knot at the bottom that it will hold the 3 beads on the string and they won't slip through. And then I'm going to leave extra on the top so that I can tie it to the garland. I will also make another knot at the top of his head just to secure those 3 beads on the twine. I painted enough beads to make 10 little snowmen, and so I'm just going to repeat the same process for all 10. I'm going to get my bright orange Arteza paint marker out, and I'm going to make the little nose on each of the snowmen. And I'm going to use the tweezers that come with it and flip the little tip around. And I just learned this recently, that there's a wide tip and a fine point tip, and you can just switch them around with your tweezers. How cool is that? Now I'm going to get my black marker. I am now going to paint on his eyes, his charcoal mouth, and the 3 buttons in his middle section for all 10 of the snowmen. In the automotive section at Dollar Tree, I found this rope that's red and white, and it's basically 3 strands, 2 of red and 1 of white, and it has that kind of candy cane look. So I separated some of the red out and cut it in order to make a little scarf for each of the snowmen. They also had this same rope or twine, whatever it is. It's almost like a plastic kind of substance, but they had it in green and white, so I ended up making scarves out of both. I had some white pipe cleaners, and I cut them into little teeny pieces to make arms for each of the snowmen. And I wasn't sure how long to make them, so I cut them and then I ended up trimming them, and I hot glued them to the sides of the snowmen. I made some waving, some with their hands down, just kind of mixed it up a bit so they didn't all look exactly the same. Once I gave all 10 snowmen their arms, I decided I needed to come up with a pattern with the beads to string between each snowman, because otherwise it would be a really short garland. So I messed around a little bit and just kind of decided, and you could pick whatever pattern you like. I just made one up, and now I am attaching the beads accordingly. So, fun tip I just learned recently. If you buy one of the little ashtrays at the Dollar Tree, you can use it to hold beads so they don't roll around on the table. You can also lay your paintbrushes across it in the little grooves where people would have put cigarettes. What a handy thing for something that I would never buy since I don't smoke. Once I finished stringing all my beads in the pattern that I want, I determined where I would attach each snowman, and because I had left string at the top, I'm able to tie it around the twine that's between each of the beads where I want to place a snowman. And so I'm going to do that with all 10 of them. Now they're all attached and they look so cute, but I felt like it needed a little more color. So I took my crimson chalk paint from Waverly and I added a little water into a bowl to water it down, almost to make it into a stain. And even though it's already strung on the garland, it was a little tricky, but I went ahead and I basically tinted or stained each of the beads, excluding the snowman, just to give it a little more color. And I'm very happy I did. It was worth it. It came out so nice. And for me, that was just what it needed. And you know what? I am so glad I did it, and I love them. And they're very festive. And then you have the little white snowman, so the contrast is perfect. And what a fun little garland. Number 13. To start off, we're going to need 2 pizza pans from the Dollar Tree. Hey, does anyone else have a hard time finding these? I couldn't find them for like months, so I finally just stocked up when I did. They're a hot commodity over there. Also, we're going to need some beads, and I used not the very largest, but the next size down. Now, my beads I ordered on Amazon. I got 1,000 assorted sizes. You cannot go wrong. That's probably the best price I've found so far. I'm removing the label and scratching off any of the little sticky things that are left behind. And I'm going to go ahead and clean the trays with some rubbing alcohol just to make sure that they are are free from debris before I do any painting of any kind. Just a good idea. I mean, they've been sitting in a store, who knows how they've been touched or what's on them dust-wise. So then I'm going to figure out what bead size I need, because I'm going to be putting the two trays together. They're going to be the wrong sides together, and that creates a little ledge and a little lip, if you will. I am determining how many beads I'm going to need. Then I put them all on skewers to make it easier to paint them, and I stick them in a little piece of foam, like that was packing foam that I had. So I try to use everything, my boxes, my packing foam. I try to find a use for everything, just to be, you know, a good steward of things and not throw them out there into the environment until they've been used up as much as possible. And then I literally will paint them just while they're standing there. It makes it so much easier. Now I'm going to go back to the trays, and I'm using the color I'm using the Waverly chalk paint, the color Mineral. And right now I'm just going to paint the edges, what you're going to see, because when they're stuck together, you won't actually see the back side of the trays. You're going to see the front sides and then kind of just a piece of the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and paint those. You know, just get that on there and let that dry so I can work on the rest of it. And I will do the same thing on the other one and let them both dry completely before I move on. And now that that side has dried, I can go ahead and paint the entire front and make sure also that the edges are done and that nothing is missed that will be seen. And I literally only had to do one full coat, and then I just went back and touched up a little, because I'm going to be dry brushing a couple of other colors on here to create a little bit of kind of a stone / aged look to this tray. I'm also painting all of those beads in the same color Mineral so that that all matches, and then they'll get dry brushed as well. Now I just want to apologize if I sound scratchy or like I have a cold. I don't. I have seasonal allergies, actually all 4 seasons, and fall, would you believe, is my favorite season, but my worst season for allergies. So I sound like I have a cold, but I don't, and sometimes I'll have a scratchy voice, and so that explains it for you. I picked up several of the Dollar Tree calendars that I could find, and this is the Shine Bright in All That You Do calendar. And I looked through and I found, just to show an example on this project, I found 3 different types of occasion pages. One for fall, one for like Thanksgiving, and one for the holiday season in December. And now I'm just figuring out how I'm going to cut them into a circle that will fit inside of the top of the tray. Now, obviously, it doesn't fill up the entire circle, and I'm going to take care of that. But I'm just going to get it as close as I can, and then I'll use the first one as a form for the other 2, and then I will cut those out as well. Now, you can use whatever you want as your different pieces for your different occasions. So if you were doing a birthday celebration or another holiday, you could get a picture or some other piece that would fit flat on top of your trays. These are just some examples for you. I came up with an idea to string all of my painted beads on some twine and then lay them down and glue them instead of individually gluing them. I thought this would save so much time and make sure that the spacing was the same between all of them. And I need to tell you, it worked out really great. The only thing that really was a big surprise was that after having measured out how many beads I needed, I was short like 3 beads. So I had to quickly put 3 more beads on a skewer, paint them, get them to dry, and then I had to glue those back on individually. But, you know, other than that, that went pretty well. And this actually just showed me how much easier it is to space the beads using the twine. So a little tip there. I added a little extra hot glue on the center part of the beads that you'll never see, just to make sure they were all very secure. And then I also got the other tray ready with hot glue as fast as I could before it dried in the rim, and then I could set that one on top of the other tray that already had the beads and put them together. Originally, I was going to use 4 of the very large beads as legs, but I thought they were just too small in this situation, so I found this little plastic kind of decorative bowl at the Dollar Tree. I think it came 4 for $1, great deal. And so I hot glued that to the center of the back. Hopefully that was the center. Not very good at doing that. And then I painted it in mineral also so that it would match completely. I'm going to start my dry brushing with the color Elephant by Waverly. It's a very dark gray. And I'm going to use this really stiff brush. And the reason I like to do a stiff brush is that it's easier to do the dry brush technique. And basically you put a little bit, very little bit of paint on the brush and wipe most of it off, which is what I'm doing on that piece of cardboard. And then you lightly brush it on your piece, especially catching edges and angles and things like that. And then just doing lightly in the center. And I decided I'm going to do this a little heavy-handed, and then I'm going to keep going over it different colors until it looks exactly the way I want. So there's really no wrong way, because you can always repaint with your original color if it gets too dark or too light. And this is my favorite part, because it's like the artistic side, and you just play with it, and I feel like I'm an artist with a palette, you know, just sitting there going at it. And so I'll just let you watch me do that. And now I'm adding a little bit of the color Plaster, which is the lighter. So basically you're using your main color, a darker color, and a lighter color. And that's how I like to dry brush, unless I'm going for a very specific look like a whitewash or antique. On the top, I am leaving the center portion blank, so without the dry brushing, because that's where our little cutout's going to sit, and you'll never see that part. Now going to seal it with some clear polyacrylic fast drying solution, and I'm going to do that on the back, all around the stand, and the sides, and the top, and let that dry.
And then I'm going to laminate my little signs that are going to go on top.
I am cutting out around the circle on all 3 of my pieces so that I can fit them on top of my tray. I guess I forgot to film this part, but I did take a piece of the larger nautical rope from Dollar Tree and I hot glued it all the way around the top edge, and that covered the spaces where you couldn't see the sign itself, where it was.
Number 12.
I am so excited about this DIY because I really wanted to do something that was very simple and like a nativity scene, something that just really focused on the real reason for the season, which is Jesus. And so what I have is a scrap piece of wood that I got for free from Lowe's. They have, if you ask up front, they have a little spot where they have some free scraps. And I learned about that from Hot Humble Pie. And so I went there and I got a bunch of free pieces of wood. It was awesome. And then I have these little kind of house looking things from Dollar Tree. And by the way, it is really hard to get those little felt flowers off. Let me tell you. Oh my gosh, I sanded and sanded. Well, anyway, I also got a little sample paint color. It's kind of like a dark taupe. And I got that at Lowe's too. It was like $1. You never know what you're going to get when you go there. You just go to the paint department and see what they've got. But it's very affordable and you can just try some really cool colors. I gave everything 2 really good coats to cover. And now I'm just going to measure and try to find the center of my board. And that's where I want to place the little house. So I'm going to use some E6000 and some hot glue. And you will see that I didn't let it dry long enough, even for the hot glue. Needless to say, you will notice that it falls off and I will reattach it. On my phone, I pulled up kind of like a very simple picture of Mary, baby Jesus, and Joseph, like in the manger. And I just wanted it to be kind of a silhouette. So I used a pencil to just freehand it, and then I'm using my white Arteza paint marker to fill it in. And it didn't quite cover the way I wanted, so I will go back in with some white acrylic paint to get that really bright white that I'm looking for. I feel like I really need to address the elephant in the room, which actually is Joseph's beard. It almost looks like he has a beak, and I'm so sorry. I played around with that thing, and then I tried to cover it up again, you'll see in a little bit. And then it gets bigger and it gets smaller. Oh my gosh, I guess I'm just not very good at drawing beards, but that's what that's supposed to be. I got this cute little wire Christmas tree ornament from the Dollar Tree, and I took the star off the top with some wire cutters, and I'm just going to hot glue it to the very top left there, and then I'm going to paint it white so it matches. I wanted this to be just very simple, just the 2 colors. And now I am re-gluing the house or the nativity scene back on. I took some burlap that I had gotten at Walmart and I made a couple cuts, and I am just hot gluing it around the long board and behind the little nativity scene. Kind of wanted to give it that rustic barn feel, like it was hay, basically like a manger, what it was. And it was in the desert, so it's not like there'd be a bunch of Christmas trees or anything. So this kind of gave that desert feel. I just wanted to let everyone know that I am on social media. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. Same name, Living My Best Life with Lisa Marie, and I hope to see you over there. Number 11. I had purchased a really large sheet of MDF because I was making a desk for crafting, and I had extra pieces, so while I was at Lowe's I had them cut the extra pieces that were left into like porch sign shapes. So I ended up with 3 of those, and right now I'm going to show you one side of what's going to be a 2-sided porch sign. The first thing I did was I painted it with the Kills white paint. It's actually their primer, and that's what I used for the base. Most of this DIY is going to be shown in pictures because it was really hard to film myself doing it. This side of the sign is going to be for fall, so I freehanded some pumpkins and then shaded them in to give them a little more dimension. I had alphabet stencils from Walmart with really large letters. I spelled out the word welcome and put them on the far right side over the white. And then I used the antique wax from Waverly and I distressed, or actually stained, the entire board except for the stencils and the pumpkins to make it look like wood grain. To create that wood grain look, you really need to brush all in one direction, and every so often make a little kind of spirally spot that makes it look a little bit like a wood knot. I left just the teeniest bit of white around the pumpkins. It gave them a little bit more of a 3-dimensional feel. I touched up with white wherever the antique wax bled and kind of cleaned that up so it looked really nice with the white frame around the letters. I freehanded some sunflowers with their stems coming down and kind of meeting up with one another to fill in the rest of the porch sign. Most of the paint I used for this is the Arteza acrylic paints. They are so vibrant and they cover so well. The last thing I did was seal the sign with polyacrylic coating because it is going to be outside. I think I did 3 coats. And we're halfway there at number 10. Is it really Christmas without a red truck? Just asking for a friend. Anyway, I went ahead and I found this little triangular shaped kind of desk stand, and I'm going to use some scrapbook paper that is like a Scotch plaid that I really love, and I'm going to Mod Podge those pieces that I cut out to the outside of it, and it's going to be like a two-sided little sign. You can put it on a tiered tray or anywhere you want, and I'm just literally Mod Podging it. And once that dries, I'm going to use some sandpaper, and I'm going to sand the edges to get any excess scrapbook paper, and that way it'll look really finished. And then I'm going to add a little Mod Podge to each of those top kind of pieces where they meet. Now I've got this ornament from Dollar Tree. It was a little red truck with a Christmas tree, and I kind of took it apart, had glitter on it, sanded that off, and now I'm going to use some red acrylic paint. I'm going to repaint it, and then I'm also going to use some burnt umber from Apple Barrel to give it a rusted look. And then I'm going to put the tires back on in black and a little bit of silver for the hubcaps and for the fenders, and just basically distress it and give it a nicer look with a little more dimension. And now I'm going to hot glue it to one side of my little triangular sign. And then I have the Christmas tree. I kind of flattened the back of it and I turned it around. Originally it had the top leaning on top of the truck, which I think is the weirdest thing. And I remember watching on Kristin Kay's channel, and she thinks the same thing, so I know I'm not the only one. But who would put the pointy top of your Christmas tree on the roof of your truck? I don't get that. Anyway, so I made it right. And now I am just taking 2 craft sticks and I cut off the little rounded edges. I stain them with the Waverly Wax chalk paint. And I'm going to use an Arteza marker, and I'm going to write J and Y, because obviously I'm going to spell the word joy. And then I'm going to take some little berries and make the O out of those, because this is a 2-sided little sign. So one side's going to have the red truck with the Christmas tree, and one side's going to have the little joy sign. And that way, no matter what angle you look at it from, there's something festive to see. I added 2 little teeny pieces of greenery to each end as well. And it's just so cute, and it was so easy, and I love it. I used a little bit of the red paint just to touch up the berries where I had pulled them apart and you could see the foam, and that way all you see is red now. Now that that's done, all that's left is to hot glue it to the other side of the sign. Number 9. For this project, I used 2 of the Dollar Tree splatter screens and some fabric that I already had at home, and then that hula skirt again in hot glue, and some leaves that I also got from the Dollar Tree. Once I decided which fabric I did want to use, I opened that up and I traced the circle part of the splatter screen twice so that I had one for each, and then I hot glued it around the edges to the actual splatter screen. I positioned the 2 splatter screens so they overlapped and brought the 2 handles together, and that's going to be the pumpkin stem. And then I hot glued the pieces that were touching together. In order to highlight the indentations that make it a pumpkin, I used my nautical rope and I hot glued it around all of the edges, and then both of the other edges that kind of are in the middle of the pumpkin, you'll see. I'm going to wrap this same nautical rope around the 2 handles to make a pumpkin stem. And then I'm going to take some little pieces of jute twine that I just had left over from trimming something, and I'm going to create a little bit of a frayed top so it looks a little more stem-like, like a dried out stem. And then I come in with my Waverly wax paint in antique to just kind of make the stem look a little darker, and I'm going to use some of those Dollar Tree leaves. Make a little leaf arrangement on the top with hot glue, and then I'm going to use my raffia, or actually hula skirt, and make a bow. I had some lace laying around, so I thought I'd just use that to kind of spice it up a bit on top of the raffia, and I really liked the way it turned out. Super cute. And then I made a little hanger for it in the back. Number 8. For this DIY, I'm going to take a couple of those little signs from Dollar Tree. They're kind of like a rectangle box with only 3 sides, and then 2 of the Christmas trees that are wooden on stakes, and then the Christmas tree that's all wrapped up in tinsel on the plastic frame. I'm going to sand off the glitter on the wooden Christmas trees. There wasn't too much on there. I'm going to use my little ladybug vacuum to clean it up, and I'll put a link in the description for that. And now if you just cut once at the bottom, it's pretty easy to unravel the tinsel on this one tree. I'm going to paint the tops where the words are of all the boxes with plaster color, Waverly chalk paint. I'm going to use my little tin snips and cut off the Christmas tree little stars, because this is going to be more of a wintry type of a DIY than a specifically Christmas one, because I'm starting to transition what I make into winter decor now that Christmas is almost here. And I'm painting the front and back of those with the plaster. The next thing I'm going to do is use a little, I don't know what you call that thing. Anyway, this tool that took off the piece of the stem that was stuck. And now I'm painting the trees the Waverly chalk paint in plaster color. Once everything dried, I put some Mod Podge on the trees, and I'm using this really cute tissue paper. It's like an interesting kind of a plaid or argyle pattern, which I really love, and I did it at an angle. And then I put a little saran wrap over it and then used my brayer that just helps get some of the wrinkles out. I actually didn't mind on these DIYs today if I had a little bit of wrinkles. Kind of thought it added a little character. It also made things easier, so you don't have to be so perfect. Now I'm just trimming around the edges once it dried, and so you can see the outline of the tree. And of course, I'm going to do this to both of my trees. And I'm actually just using the little teeny scissors you can get at Dollar Tree. They're perfect for this kind of cutting in little spaces. Now we're moving on to the plastic tree that had the tinsel on it. I'm using my little wire cutters to get all those little notches off. They come off really easily. And once those are off, I am going to use one of the gray and white mop heads you get at Dollar Tree. And if you cut from the very top, they're kind of doubled around. So when you cut from the top, you'll be able to loosen them all, and then you have long strands. I end up needing a few more than I originally cut, but I just went ahead and cut some more because there was still some left on the mop head. Now I'm going to hot glue these around this tree. Around the very bottom, I just wrapped it around, but when I get to the actual tree part, I'm going to go like weaving, so kind of like in and out until I cover the entire thing. So it took a while, so I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I'm going to fast forward through it, but you get the idea. Here's what it looks like once I finished weaving in and out. Now, I'm going to go back to those signs, and I decided I needed a third one, so I quickly painted the top of that in the plaster, let it dry, and then I added the ink-colored paint to the top, let it dry, and sanded it off on the edges and the top to make it a little bit distressed. Now I'm figuring out the placement, where I'm going to put them. So I put the mop head tree between the back 2 boxes, and I'm going to put the other argyle looking trees in the front 2 boxes, and I'm just hot gluing them right there until everything is nice and secure. I
got a little packet of snowflakes from Dollar Tree, and I decided I'm going to hot glue them to that very top piece where you see the dark colored paint. I wasn't sure at first, but that's where I ended up deciding to put them. I think they look really cute there. So that's what I did to embellish the boxes. The mop head tree was leaning a little bit, so I secured it in the back by tying it to itself and just kind of propping it up. And then I put some ribbon on the back and hot glued them all together so they'd stand nice and tall. And I love them. What do you guys think? I think it came out really cute. And that Argyle tissue paper is kind of the start of a little vignette for me here. Number 7. This DIY is a combination of Dollar Tree and Goodwill, I guess thrift to treasure. I got this placemat at the Dollar Tree that says blessed, and there's some of the bigger nautical rope that I got from Amazon. And then I got this really cool metal tray at Goodwill for $4. The first thing I'm going to do is position the bottom of the tray over the placemat so I can decide where it is that I'll need to cut. And I used a blue marker to go ahead and do that. I outlined it and now I'm just cutting it out. I chose the word blessed because that is very inspiring to me to know that I am blessed. And actually there is a scripture. It is Psalms 118:26 that says, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. We have blessed you from the house of the Lord." And I just love that, to know that I can be a blessing to others and others can bless me. And that's very inspiring. So I just hot glued this word blessed, the placemat, into the bottom of the tray. And then I added some of that rope around just to kind of hide those little edges where I cut the placemat. And I went around several times until I kind of reached the top. And then I'm going to construct little handles out of an even larger rope, the kind that you get at Dollar Tree. Now to tie the projects together, I decided to use my buffalo check ribbon and make a bow on each side of by the handle, just to kind of cover where it touches the bottom there, where it's raw edges. And so I just make the little bow, just very basic bow, trim the edges with a dovetail, and then hot glue them to either side. Number 6. Not really into orange pumpkins too much, but I found these 3 orange styrofoam pumpkins at the Dollar Tree. And I used a little sharp blade to cut around the top. You see there's a circle there, so it made it very easy, and they're hollow. So you just cut around that line that's already there for the circle and take the lids off with the little stem. And then I used 3 different colors of paint by Waverly: plaster, celery, and mineral. I wanted to use neutral colors since I was going to glam them up. Here they are, all painted, and they look so much better than when they were orange, at least in my opinion. Of course, if you decide to try this, you can do them in any color that you like. It took a good 2 coats to really cover that orange completely. For the pumpkin that I painted plaster, I used these adhesive fake diamonds from the Dollar Tree, and I cut them into strips, and they just adhered right on there. You don't have to use glue or anything. I calculated how many strips I needed for each of the indentations on the pumpkin. This was the only pumpkin I was going to use the top. I had 3 pumpkins, and I took 2 of the stems to create one big stem for the one pumpkin.
I used the Folklore metallic paint in sterling silver to paint the lid and the stems that I put together, and that kept with the glam look. And then I placed them on top, and I used some more of those little fake diamond adhesives and did a couple rows around the stem, and there it is. I love this pumpkin. It's so cute. For the next glam pumpkin, this is the one that I painted mineral. I'm going to use some succulents and moss balls that I got at the Dollar Tree. In order to cover the opening a little bit, I'm going to glue with hot glue the moss balls all the way around so there's only a little hole left in the center. I chose 3 different succulents and I placed them in the center until I thought they looked good, and then I attached them with hot glue as well. I love this one. It kind of has a boho feel to it. The final pumpkin that I painted in celery, I decided to use my Folklore gold paint, it's metallic, to do a chevron pattern all the way around. I took some really pretty white florals and some greenery and put them inside, and I just love how it turned out. I love these pumpkins so much, and I want to keep them up till after Thanksgiving. So I came up with an idea. I found these little letters at the Target little dollar section when you first walk in the door, and they had the words grateful and thankful, which I painted with the silver metallic Folklore paint, and I attached them to 2 of the pumpkins. Number 5. This DIY, you will need a little glass or a vase or a ceramic piece, some water, some spackling compound, and then something to mix the water and the spackling compound in, and a little stick. Now this technique I learned from another YouTuber named Justin Ray, and I'll put his link in the description, and also a friend of mine, and she has an amazing channel called Craft Eat Repeat, and Naka, she also did something similar on her channel, so I'll also link her channel in the description. They're both awesome and you should check them out for sure. So the first thing I did was mix the water and the compound to get the consistency that I wanted. What I'm trying to do is create kind of a texture, clay type look, almost like pottery on this glass, and that would just change the whole look and feel of it and make it more have that boho vibe. Now this is really sticky and you're definitely going to get your fingers dirty. You could wear gloves, but I actually found that not wearing gloves was better because it just made for an easier use of my hands. You just have to wash your hands and you're done. It's worth it. And just go ahead and cover the entire thing as thick as you would like it. Now, one of the reasons that you want this thick is if you're going to do any kind of indentation. So I did a bunch of little circles with my finger all over, and I wasn't going for anything super clean. In fact, I actually wanted it to be kind of rough because I didn't want it to look perfect. I really wanted it to have that boho feel, and so it's edgy and it's rough, but you can still see those circles, and we'll be doing something later to really call them out even more. Just have fun with it. And then you're going to need to let it dry, and it does take quite a while to dry, especially if you put the compound on as thick as I did. Maybe even overnight would be a good idea. And this is just a view looking into the actual glass so you can see what that looks like. I painted the whole entire thing on the outside with my Waverly wax paint in the color white. I only did 1 coat because, again, I wasn't going for that perfect look, but I wanted to have a nice clean base. You could actually pick any color that you want. This is the one that worked for me. And make sure that it dries completely before you move on to the next step. One of the things that I love about boho is that you mix natural elements. So pottery and metal and wood and rope, all those things. So I used my Arteza acrylic marker in the color bronze to highlight the circles, and I did it in a really edgy, sloppy way on purpose so that, again, it would have that boho vibe and not look perfect. This is called the honeycomb vase, and the small one is $32. I actually made this originally in a different video but didn't know it was from Anthropology, so I brought it back into this one in the state that it was in when I finished it, and am now changing the color from bronze to gold and then adding some polyurethane to give it a little more sheen so that it will actually look more like the one from Anthropology. I was just trying a different technique when I made this in the first place and didn't know that it was inspired by an actual product. This is just kind of making it like the Anthropology one. So it's a little more inspired intentionally this time, not on accident. I would definitely say that my version is a little rougher. Theirs is just so polished and nice, but that's to be expected, right? Number 4. So now this DIY is using a gift bag from Dollar Tree, that same Argyle tissue paper, and some paint stir sticks that I got a 10-pack at Lowe's for very inexpensive, which I already had. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to figure out how many pieces I need to make a frame. Now make sure you don't use the ruler side unless that's the look you're going for. And then I ordered these miter shears on Amazon, which are amazing. This is my first time to use them. I highly recommend it. I'll definitely put the link down in the description. And I'm going to cut them to size. I also have this lath or shims that I got at Lowe's as well, and I'm going to use those to make a little like kind of a palette board. And so I'm just placing those over the back of the picture so I can figure out how big to make it. In the past I've made a sign with a gift bag where I made it look like wood pallets, but this time I thought I'd actually use them, and then I'll cut little strips and I will glue them onto the little palette pieces. You can see what I'm doing. I'm tracing the lines in between so I know how big to cut the strips. I still have to do some trimming when that part is done, but I wanted to at least have something to work with. And then I'm actually going to use wood glue, and I'm going to put that right on the little wood palette strips, and then I will put my pieces of the gift bag right over that. And I'll use my brayer to roll over the top and make sure I have a good connection. It's kind of funny, the little ends started to roll up, but they're going to be covered by the actual frame, so I'm really not too concerned about that. I'm going to go in with a little blade and trim away any of the excess between the little palette boards. And now I'm measuring out the pieces of the stir sticks for my frame, and I have to cut a couple pieces to make the longer sides because they weren't quite long enough. So I just hot glue those pieces together. I'm going to paint both sides of my frame pieces with the plaster paint. When it dries, I'm going to cut out the tissue paper, that Argyle paper, for each one, and I'm going to put Mod Podge on them, and I'm going to lay my strips right over the top of each one. When it dries, I'm going to sand off the edges so it's a nice clean finish, and that's going to be the frame. I'm also going to add a coat of Mod Podge to the front of the picture just because I want to protect it. It has some rips and stuff on the side, which I did to make it look a little older, but I want to make sure it's kind of sealed. And then I'm going to go in with some burnt umber paint by Apple Barrel, and I'm going to do some distressing and dry brushing where you put just a little bit on the brush, wipe most of it off, and then go over it. And I'm mostly going over those edges of each of the palette board, and then just kind of distressing up the little white parts, you know, wherever they are, just to give the whole thing a more, you know, cohesive look. And I love the way that turns out. It's so cute. I'm going to use hot glue, and I'm going to attach the frame that I made. And then I'm going to go on the back with some more of those little like lath pieces of wood, and I'm going to help support the pieces that hung over the edge of the palette by cutting them to size and then hot gluing them on there, and that will create a very firm foundation for the frame that I made so it won't bend off or, you know, the hot glue decides to give in or something. And this is how it turned out. And we're down to the final top 3. I decided to take my inspiration from Anthropologie. It's a store that I really like, but I can never shop in because it's so expensive. So this first DIY is called the Horus Hurricane. I guess it's either a vase or a candle holder, and it costs $38. And it's made out of like a basket rattan type of material and some wood. And looking at Dollar Tree products, I thought, okay, what could I do? So I found this non-slip thing that you put under dishes in your cabinets, or under anything you don't want to slip. And I thought, that kind of has a basket-like look to it. And I found 2 little plastic containers that were like leftover containers from food. And I used, the pieces from the little foam brushes. Well, I never throw those away when the brushes aren't good anymore, so I saved them. And I was able to make the little legs out of that. So I'm using just a variety of colors. They're mostly all chalk paint, Waverly, and I'm just blending them. And basically it's the wax white color, it's fawn, hazelnut, and I'm just trying to come up with a look that resembles what I saw in the picture. So I just continue to paint different colors on it until I get what I like. So I took the non-stick stuff and I kind of measured by wrapping it around each of the little bowls to see how much I would need. And because the weave in them is pretty wide and I want it to look more like the rattan, I cut 3 pieces for each one, and that way I can overlap them, not an exact overlap, but kind of stagger them a little bit so that it will be a tighter weave. And then I'm going to hot glue that on to both of them. Once I have all 3 pieces attached, I'm going to trim around the bottom and just get any little excess pieces. Now on the original one, it had like kind of a little piece of wood around the top and the bottom, which I wouldn't be able to do. So I'm going to use some nautical rope instead, just to kind of create that border. So it would be good to remember that I'm not trying to make an exact copy of the one from Anthropologie. I'm just trying to do an inspired version. I ended up taking a little bit of jute twine. Just at the very top there was a teeny tiny gap and it was too small for more of the nautical rope. So by putting a little bit of the twine in there, it just fit perfectly and covered up that spot. And now it was time to attach my 4 little legs on the bottom of each one. I used hot glue to do that, and then I turned it around to see if it would stand up straight. And I added a teeny bit of hot glue to the bottom of the 2 of them, actually, to make sure that it did sit straight, because it was really hard to get that balance. But that worked. That was a great way to do that. And then I just decided to touch up the paint again a little bit and add a little more texture and color, and I'm using just a combination of the hazelnut and the white. I felt like the part that was supposed to look like rattan just looked too kind of yellowish, so I used a little bit of the antique wax from Waverly just to change the tone a little bit, and just barely brushing it on and kind of dabbing it here and there. And then it really did have that, you know, rattan look when I was done, and I was very happy with that. Friends, I am really excited for the year 2021. I'm going to do some really exciting things on my channel, a lot of fun, and I cannot wait to show you all the things I have planned. Number 2. I'm going to use the farmer's market calendar that came out earlier this year. I couldn't find one, and my sweet friend Aneka from the channel Craft Eat Repeat sent me one. And I cut out the December picture, which is this Farm Fresh Christmas trees that I love. And because I use everything that I have at home, I have this huge piece of cardboard that was very thick, and I used a blade to cut it to size, and it had a couple of folds in it, so I put some craft sticks on there just to hold it more sturdy. It was very thick, but it had that bend in it. So I hot glued those on the back to make sure that it would stay very sturdy. And then because the calendar has the white on the back side with the dates from the previous month, I painted the front of the cardboard in my ink Waverly chalk paint, and that way you won't see those lines. It's just a simple little thing you can do, and you don't have to worry about, you know, what happens afterwards as far as seeing lines or dates or anything like that. And then, you know the little hole where you hang up your calendar? Well, of course you can see that. So underneath the actual calendar page and on top of the black, I put a little bit of plaster color there just to kind of camouflage that. And then I put a glue stick all over the back, and I went to put it on my cardboard, and for some reason it didn't stick. So when I put it directly on the cardboard and then rubbed it down, it did stick. So that worked great. And I used my brayer to flatten it out and make sure there were no little places that weren't touching. Now I'm going to go in with my antique wax by Waverly and start distressing the edges lightly. And also there's little planks on there, so I wanted to make it look like it was a real wood sign, so I started to accentuate those. Now if you know me, you know it's never enough. So I'm like, well, this doesn't look old enough yet. So I used the antique wax to start going in and distressing the whole sign. Well, then you couldn't see my plank lines, so I needed to go back and get my ink paint and bring them out a little more with that. So then I did the edges, and you can kind of figure it out from there. But I'm very happy with how it looks now. This is much more aged and distressed, and I feel like it looks like it's been hanging up for years. I got some nautical rope from the Dollar Tree, and I cut it so I could start hot gluing it around the edges, and that would be my frame. And I love that rustic look, and it just keeps it a little lighter. It's easy to hang, and at the end I put a little bit of jute twine to hang it, and that's it. This one is done. Super cute, super easy, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Let me know if you've ever made a sign out of a calendar page. It's really fun and easy to do. I'm just thrilled with how it turned out. And last, but definitely not least, is my number 1 DIY of 2020. Okay, warning ahead, this is going to go really fast only because I've made something very similar before, and a lot of people requested that I do it different, and my mom wanted one, so this is a request from her. So I'm not showing you how I made the tassels, but I will link a video with very specific instructions. I cut 2 pieces of burlap, hot glued them together, made a bunch of tassels in order to create a Christmas tree, and I am just hot gluing them right onto the burlap, and that's basically my support. And I took a little star from the Dollar Tree, little wooden ornaments, and I hot glued that to the top. Now I'm taking a craft stick, cutting it to size. I'm going to use Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm going to stain that and wipe off the excess and let that be the trunk of the tree. Now I'm going to hot glue that to the base of the tree, and I'm going to trim the edges of the burlap. And I'm using some rose gold paint by Folklore, and I did the little star at the top, and then I cut apart these little metallic gold berries from Dollar Tree from a pick, and I'm going to go ahead and paint them with that same rose gold because I wanted to tone down the gold and make it just a little softer with the rose gold. And then I've got these little teeny Christmas present sticker things made out of wood from the Dollar Tree, and I'm using the rose gold on them. And then to paint the bow, I made a combination of apple barrels, burnt umber, and the rose gold, and that's what I did those little ribbons with. And I'm hot gluing that to the bottom of the tree to have the little presents underneath. And now I'm going to take a piece of cardboard, because I love to do that instead of buying foam board, and it's just good for recycling, and I have tons of boxes. And I'm going to cut it to size, and I'm going to hot glue the burlap on there, and that will become the full-on support for that. And I'm going to shore it up with some craft sticks on the back because the cardboard had a little bit of a crease in it. Now I'm going to take a bunch of craft sticks, I'm going to cut off the rounded edges, and I'm going to figure out how many I need to create a frame around my tassel tree. And that's what I'm doing right now. Then I'm going to stain them all with the Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm going to wipe off the excess as I usually do. And then I'm going to fill in the little gaps where I just didn't quite make it, and I'm going to put extra hot glue on the back to, secure it. And I had one little gap, so I made a little mini piece to stick in there. And now I'm adding one more layer of the Waverly Antique Wax because I thought it just needed a little bit more depth. Now, after the fact, I created a little base for it to stand upright by using some Jenga blocks. Thank you so much for watching and being here. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and definitely give this video a like, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Until then, you are a blessing.